To what extent can a legendary pilot like Lewis Hamilton endure a season that seems to go against each angle? And what reveals its frustration in the GP of Spain about the internal tension in Ferrari? Lewis Hamilton came to Ferrari wrapped in a wave of expectations that transcended the sports. His signing was not only the greatest news of the pilot market in years, but also a symbolic declaration of Ferrari. They wanted to return to the top with the most laureate pilot in modern history. The union of a heptacampion in the world with the most iconic rack of motoring was seen as a combination for success, an inevitable winning formula. However, the epic story was quickly replaced by a much more earthly one, full of mechanical obstacles, technical disconnection, and a growing emotional frustration. The first day of activities at the 2025 Grand Prix, played at the Barcelona Catalunya circuit, was a microcosm of this turbulence. During the first free session, Hamilton achieved a promising third position that generated a glimpse of hope in Maranello's halls. But that illusion was ephemeral. Just a few hours later, in the second practice, he fell to 11th place in the timetable. This drastic oscillation not only revealed a lack of consistency in the SF-25 car, but also the obvious difficulty of the team to correctly interpret the changing conditions of the Spanish layout and respond with effective adjustments. That gap between one session and another is not less. It represents a failure in the correlation process between simulator data, track, and set-up decisions. The situation became even more critical when Hamilton's comments on radio during the FP2 were so raw that their own team leader described them as extremes. It was not a simple relief. It was the audible manifestation of an accumulated tension since the beginning of the year, which seems to have finally overwhelmed in Barcelona. And not only because of the performance of the car, but for the feeling of being trapped in a structure that, despite the efforts, fails to offer you the necessary tools to compete at the level that your history demands. It is the voice of a pilot who, for the first time in many years, is in a position of technical and emotional vulnerability, without a clear exit. The most revealing of the day were not the times by return or the aerodynamic configuration of the SF-25. It was Hamilton's body attitude when getting out of the car, the expression contained during interviews, silences among his phrases. We are not facing a simple sports frustration, but before an emotional fissure in a pilot who has always handled even the worst storms. In that Friday in Barcelona, what was seen on the track was secondary compared to what was evidenced in its nonverbal language. The disappointment of who feels that the project that should redeem it is increasingly far from fulfilling its promise. Lewis Hamilton's emotional and competitive journey aboard SF-25 during the 2025 season has been one of the most disturbing stories in paddock. From the moment he got into the red car in the preseason tests, it was clear that this challenge was different from any other he had faced in his career. Ferrari represents a deeply different culture from that of Mercedes, not only in terms of structure and technical philosophy, but also in the way in which pressure, internal communication, and decision-making is managed. Adapting to this environment is not just a matter of piloting, it is an integral process that tests even the most experienced. And in the case of Hamilton, that transition has been full of ups and downs. The numbers are eloquent. In 8 races it has added only 63 points, a figure that pales in history. From a disqualification in China to a modest 4th place in Miami, its season has been anything but linear. Although he achieved a victory in the Shanghai sprint race, that flash of brilliance has quickly been diluted in front of the harsh reality of the championship. Every weekend it seems to be a new battle against the car, time, and sometimes against itself. One of the most worrying constants has been his inability to match Charles Leclerc, his teammate. It is not only about career positions, but a substantial difference in the way of extracting performance of the same car. In Saudi Arabia, the difference was abysmal. More than 30 seconds separated both Ferrari, with Leclerc raised to the podium while Hamilton sailed in the anonymity of the middle squad. That distance not only shows an adaptation problem, but it reinforces the feeling that the car has been built more around Leclerc's preferences, leaving Hamilton out of his comfort zone. Internally, the team knows. Martin Brundle described the situation with a metaphor as graphic as revealing. Piloting the SF-25 for Hamilton has been like using the ice skates of another person. It is not a direct criticism, but an observation that reflects how disconnected the driver of the car feels. This disconnection translates into decisions that are not working, in configurations that do not respond as expected, and in frustrations that accumulate career after career. The integration process has not only been slow, but deeply uncomfortable. But the most alarming is not technical, but in the mental state that Hamilton has glimpsed. His statements have mutating resignation with an unusual speed. The phrase he spoke in Saudi Arabia, There is no solution, so it will be the rest of the year, it will be painful, was a watershed. It represents an abandonment of the positive narrative that has always characterized its public communications. It is the verbalization of a partial defeat, the admission that 2025 could be a year to forget, rather than to conquer. In this context, his words after the day in Barcelona acquire a new weight. I would not say that I am motivating the team at this time. You just keep your head down and keep working. You just don't give up. It is not a speech to inspire, it is a confession of emotional fatigue. The language used transmits an inertia more than an active determination. And that, coming from Hamilton, is more worrying than any deficit in the stopwatch. We are not seeing the pilot fighting for tenths. We are seeing a champion trying to meet a motivation that seems to drain between the fingers every weekend. What happened on Friday of the Spain Grand Prix at the Barcelona Catalunya circuit was not simply a bad day for Lewis Hamilton. It was the most raw and explicit manifestation of a structural problem that has been crawling from the beginning of the season. In Ferrari, inconsistent performance is not just a matter of configuration or lack of grip. It is the symptom of a deeper technical disorganization that compromises the development of the car, communication between pilot and engineers, and above all, the team's ability to respond quickly to the demands of the championship. When Hamilton declared on radio that his car was non-conductible, he was not exaggerating or dramatizing. That phrase is the culmination of a chain of technical mismatches and focus errors that, career after career, have undermined their trust. The SF-25 has proven to have an extremely narrow operation window. It works well in very specific conditions, but as soon as temperatures, tire compounds, or the type of asphalt change, the car becomes an unpredictable machine. This lack of versatility is lethal in a season that demands absolute adaptability. The inability of the team to offer a viable solution in Barcelona points to a worrying disconnection between the factory simulations and the real behavior of the car on the track. What works in Maranello does not translate into results on Fridays and Saturdays of Grand Prix. That technical lag is one of the great injuries of the project. Unlike teams such as McLaren or Mercedes, which have demonstrated immediate reaction capacity through specific and effective update packages, Ferrari continues to bet on incremental adjustments that are late or simply do not work. This strategic slowness is inadmissible for a Hamilton-caliber pilot, who has been used to working with much more agile and proactive structures during his stage in Mercedes. Beyond the technical plane, what happened in Barcelona exposed the internal cracks of the team. It is not just that the car does not give up, it is that the environment surrounding the project seems to deteriorate with each frustrating day. When the star pilot begins to emit signals of emotional disconnection, the effect is multiplied inside the garage. Engineers lose clear references, the team doubts strategic decisions, and errors accumulate in chain. This negative cycle features: the car does not work, the pilot loses confidence, the equipment is tense, the solutions do not arrive, and the car is still not working. Even internal dynamics between pilots begin to tense. Although there have been no confrontations, Leclerc's evident advantage over Hamilton in classification and career introduces a silent tension. Hamilton is used to leading his teams, to be the first reference, and in Ferrari, at least for now, that role belongs to Monegasco. This investment of hierarchies, added to the lack of results, is eroding the mental structure with which Hamilton built his domain for a decade. Friday in Barcelona was, in many ways, a frozen scene of the drama that is lived within the Ferrari team. A kind of static radiography that allows you to clearly observe each of the evils that afflict the project. A difficult to pilot, a technical structure disincoherent with the track, a team under pressure, and a champion that begins to resign itself. The most disturbing thing is not that there has been a bad day, but that there is no clear solution on the horizon. And when that happens in Formula One, the real problem is no longer the car. It is the culture of the team. Friday's closure in Barcelona was not simply the end of a disappointing day for Lewis Hamilton. It was also the beginning of an inevitable conversation about its role, its immediate future, and the true reach of its influence within Ferrari. His body expression, the chosen phrases, the energy with which he responded to the press, everything pointed to a pilot who begins to contemplate a different reality from the one he imagined when he signed with the Scuderia. That reality does not include constant victories or struggles for championships. At least not this year. It includes internal fight, painful adaptation, and the need to reformulate your personal expectations in real time. The deepest learning is not technical or strategic, but psychological. Hamilton is living an experience that the great champions rarely face: the feeling of impotence. It no longer depends exclusively on your ability, not even your experience or determination. It depends on an ecosystem that has not yet found its ideal form. And that type of dependence, for someone who has controlled their destination for more than a decade, is difficult to accept. The interesting thing is that it has not surrendered. Instead of attacking the team or questioning the project in public, its approach has been stoic. He has lowered his head and continues to work. But even in that gesture there is a silent resignation, an admission that 2025 may not return everything he gave to the project. What happens in the next races will be key, because although the season seems complicated from the competitive, there are still many opportunities to build something deeper. A solid advance with the team, a better mutual understanding, and above all, a work structure that allows Hamilton to recover its best version. It is not only about track results, but to create an environment where the pilot's talent can flourish without current restrictions.